And now time for the AFEX Commodities market update for the week ended 14th of November 2022. We see the AFEX Commodity Market Summary was mostly green, but for more, let's have David Komadu, Strategy and Corporate Finance Analyst at AFEX, to give us the details. Great to have you on the program.
Good morning, Ladi. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so give us a rundown of activities on the exchange.
So over the course of the trading week, we saw an increase in total turnover by 2.64 times, moving from 1.12 billion to close the trading week at 2.96 billion, while the volume of contracts traded also saw an increase by 2.63 times, moving from just over 3.6 million to close the trading week at just over 9.5 million. While the number of deals saw an increase by about 8.48%, moving from 389 deals to close the trading week at 422 deals. The ACI, which is the AFEX Commodities Index, remained unchanged at 455.71 basis points, while the AFEX Export Index saw an increase of about 3.97%, moving from 202.33 basis points to close the week at 210.37 basis points. Moving on to the volume of contracts traded on the exchange, you saw an increase in the volume for soybean, moving from 432,539 contracts to close the week at 2,538,140 contracts. Paddy rice saw an increase, moving from 311,032 contracts to close the week at 3,185,130 contracts. Sorghum saw an increase also by 4,002 contracts to close the week at 611,006 contracts, while cashew saw an increase, moving from 295 contracts to close the week at 590,118 contracts. Moving on to the price changes, we saw an increase in the price of maize of about 10.65%, representing 24.09 naira to close the week at 250.24 naira, while paddy rice saw an increase of about 0.32%, representing 0.93 naira to close the week at 287 naira. Clean sorghum saw an increase of about 0.63%, representing 1.82 naira to close the week at 289.87 naira. While soybean, on the other hand, saw a decline of about 7.37%, representing 28 naira to close the trading week at 352 naira. All other commodities on the exchange remained unchanged. For more information on the commodities market, you can always check out our website at Africa Exchange and our social media handle at COMEX by AFEX.
All right, see, soybean got hammered there, quite a big move down. But thank you so much. That was David Komadu, Strategy and Corporate Finance Analyst at AFEX. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right, let's take the conversation forward now. We see it's been inhibiting factors that impede the success of every planting season. In this 2022-2023 AFEX wet season crop production report, some of them were listed and their implications were explicitly discussed. Let's talk more about this now with Yusuf Ogunbi, Head Sales and Sales Operation AFEX Fairtrade Limited. Great to have you on the program. Long time.
Hi, Ladi. Good morning. Nice to be here again.
Yeah, great to see you. So, according to the report, the agricultural production volumes will be lower than farmers' expectations this season. I guess this is expected.
Yeah. As we've said over and over again, starting from the early part of the year, we saw the effects of the Russia-Ukraine war affect the prices of fertilizer, and then that meant that farmers that used to buy probably 6 bags of fertilizers before will probably have to buy 4 in this case now, or probably 3 in worst case scenarios. And some others would even have to not use fertilizers as a result of that hike in price. That was one factor that started at the beginning of the season. And you know, once this starts at the beginning of the season like that, there's little to no, there's almost nothing you can do to change that trajectory that would affect productivity and yields for the rest of the season. Then we saw, as the season went by, we saw some floods here and there across the country. I think 35 out of 36 states were affected by floods. in Nigeria, and we also saw that on a global scale. So that meant that even out of the little that we would have to produce, some of it will be wiped away by the floods. And then we saw some switches between some commodities affecting the volumes that we produce of each of these commodities as we come into the harvest season.
And we did see the hike in fertilizer prices. That was a major constraint for farmers this season. If the crisis persists and the prices keep going up, are there other substitutes for fertilizer? Well, cow dung comes to mind for me.
Yeah, but then the question is how much of cow dung can we get to substitute for the fertilizers that we have? That's the interesting part. Inorganic fertilizers and organic fertilizers are very critical elements to the productivity gains that we've seen globally over the course of the past 5 decades, if not more. Just yesterday, the United Nations announced that the global population hit 8 billion, and that tells us that we need to produce more, and that's where inorganic fertilizers become more important. So back to your question, if you ask the question around whether protracting the crisis would affect production, it will definitely do. Just yesterday, we also heard that 2 of Russia's missiles hit the NATO territory. We hope it doesn't escalate further, but if it does, it's a very, very big it's a very big elephant in the room, and it will affect production whether we like it or not. The question is, how can we then quickly mitigate, given the fact that we've experienced this year? How do we then solve these problems or provide some mitigants going into the coming year in 2023?
I guess everyone needs to position for any eventualities with that. But how does AFEX help to, better the effects of external shocks on the fertilizer supply chain?
So first of all, we are releasing the crop production survey this year, and we are almost telling everybody, if not so, we are telling everybody what we think happened this year. Some of the highlights of that report will also be telling us what we think we can do going forward. I think it's important we let all stakeholders, we provide that awareness that this is what is going on and this is the likelihood of each of these scenarios playing out. So that's the first thing. That awareness is key. Also remember that we are going into an election year, and it's easy for us to kind of like have a divided attention going into this year. Secondly, for us, our efforts are all year round, never-ending efforts, because we see this sector as a very critical sector. So currently, we are preparing for the wheat season, because wheat is planted between the months of November, within the month of November. So we are currently preparing for the wheat season. The dry season for paddy, which is rice, which all of us consume, is also important, and we're already making preparations for that. So for us, it goes back to the story around platforms, ecosystems, and infrastructure, and that's how we think that we can unlock all of these things. So if we make everybody aware of the problems we are faced with, we provide the infrastructure, we take an ecosystem view rather than an entity view, but an ecosystem view of the whole thing, working with the farmers, the processors, the agro-service providers, and we work with all of these people in the value chain to ensure that we mitigate some of these effects. So for us, that's the way we look at it from an ecosystem standpoint. So it's all year round, never-ending effort, and we are almost always on the field trying to get this work done.
Okay, but what are the possible sustainable ways to make the next, planting season better than the last?
Yeah, and it's a lot of outreach awareness, to be honest, right? The last planting season was faced with a lot of challenges, which were kind of like not expected. Nobody anticipated, or let me say, we in Nigeria didn't anticipate that Russia will invade Ukraine, even though it's been there for a while. But then it wasn't something we would put into the mix of our own scenarios from the get-go. But now that we have some of these things playing around, you now know that you have those long-tail events coming into bear, going into the season. We then know that there's a lot of outreach to be done. There's a lot of awareness to be provided to people. There's a lot of campaign to be done around some of these effects, and that's the first thing. The second one is then looking at how Nigeria can then be sustainable in terms of some of these inputs that we need, whether you're looking at it for the fertilizer angle, and you're looking at it from the crop protection chemicals angle, you're looking at it from the seeds angle. And I must say there's been a lot of progress, right? We just need to deepen these efforts. We need to double down on them and ensure that we get them done quickly and to mitigate some of the problems that we foresee. So it's outreach, awareness. Outreach means talking to the farmers, as we've said before. Awareness to all stakeholders to ensure that we are all aware of the problems we face. And lastly, getting the job done across all value chains to ensure that, to a large extent, we are self-sufficient for some of these items that we consume.
All right. Well, I guess we all have a lot to do there. Thank you so much, Yusuf Ogumbi, Head Sales Operation, AFEX Fair Trade Limited. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much, Ladi.
All right. We'll take a moment now.